The rain hammered against my kitchen window like thousands of tiny fists demanding entry, each drop a desperate plea that mirrored the exhaustion seeping through my bones. I stood at the sink, hands submerged in lukewarm dishwater, watching the storm transform my quiet street into a river of darkness. The scent of cheap lavender dish soap mixed with the musty smell of my old house, a smell I'd grown so accustomed to that I barely noticed it anymore, except on nights like this when the dampness made everything worse. My fingers pruned as I scrubbed the same plate for the third time, my mind elsewhere. The double shift at the diner had left my feet swollen and my back aching, but the tips had been decent. $53, enough for groceries, and maybe, just maybe, a small payment toward the mounting electric bill that sat on my counter like a ticking time bomb. I was 26 years old and felt ancient, invisible to everyone except when they needed their coffee refilled or their orders taken. Thunder cracked overhead, so loud it rattled the cheap dishes in my hands. I flinched, nearly dropping the plate, and that's when I heard it. A small, frightened cry from outside. A child's voice, barely audible over the storm's fury. I dried my hands on my worn apron and moved to the front window, pulling back the faded curtain. The streetlight flickered, casting unstable shadows across my small front yard. Through the sheets of rain, I could barely make out two figures huddled under the broken awning of Mrs. Chen's abandoned house next door. One tall, broad-shouldered, hunched protectively over a smaller shape. A child, no more than 5 or 6 years old. My heart clenched. I shouldn't get involved. I knew that. In this neighborhood, you learned quickly to mind your own business, to keep your head down and your doors locked. But the child cried out again, and my hand was already reaching for the deadbolt before my rational mind could stop me. The cold air slapped my face as I opened the door, rain immediately soaking through my thin cardigan. "Hey!" I called out, my voice nearly swallowed by the wind. "Hey, you can't stay out there!" The tall figure's head snapped toward me, and even in the darkness, even through the rain, I felt the weight of his stare. It was assessing, calculating, dangerous in a way that made my stomach flip. For a moment I considered retreating back inside, but the child whimpered, and my feet carried me forward onto the porch. "Please," I shouted over the storm, wrapping my arms around myself. "You'll freeze out there. Come inside, just until the storm passes." The man didn't move. Water streamed down what I could now see was an expensive-looking coat, completely inappropriate for someone seeking shelter in this run-down neighborhood. He stood perfectly still, as if weighing my offer against some invisible threat I couldn't comprehend. "My son." His voice cut through the rain, deep and controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place. "European, maybe Italian. He's cold." "Then bring him inside," I insisted, already shivering. "I have towels. Hot tea, please." Another moment of hesitation, then he moved. His hand, large, with long fingers, rested protectively on the child's shoulder as they climbed my 3 rickety porch steps. As they passed under my porch light, I got my first real look at them. The child was beautiful, with dark curls plastered to his pale forehead and enormous eyes that seemed too old for his small face. He clutched a soaked stuffed rabbit, holding it like a lifeline. But it was the man who stole my breath. He had to be in his mid-30s, with sharp, aristocratic features that belonged on a movie screen, not in my dilapidated neighborhood. Dark hair, slightly too long, framed a face that was all angles and shadows. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes so dark they appeared black in the dim light. Rain dripped from his coat, and I caught the scent of something expensive. Leather, cedar, and something else. Something that spoke of money and power, of a world so far removed from mine it might as well have been another planet. "Thank you," he said, his voice quieter now but no less commanding. He looked at my house, at my threadbare welcome mat, at the peeling paint on my doorframe, and I felt suddenly, acutely aware of my poverty. "It's not much," I said quickly, defensively, stepping back to let them enter. "But it's warm and dry." The child rushed in first, and the man followed, having to duck slightly to clear my doorframe. He seemed too large for my tiny living room, too refined for the mismatched furniture and faded wallpaper I'd inherited from my grandmother. His presence filled the space, making everything else seem smaller, shabbier. "I'm Emma," I said, closing the door against the storm and turning the deadbolt. The click echoed in the sudden quiet. "Emma Carter." "Marco," he replied after a beat, his hand still on the child's shoulder. "And this is Luca." I knelt down to the boy's level, smiling despite my exhaustion. "Hi, Luca. Let's get you out of those wet clothes, okay? I bet I can find something dry." Luca looked up at his father, waiting for permission. Marco gave a slight nod, and only then did the child relax marginally. "The bathroom's just down the hall," I said, pointing. "There are towels in the cabinet. I'll make some tea and see what I can find for Luca to wear. Maybe one of my old sleep shirts?" Marco's eyes followed me as I moved toward the kitchen, that same assessing stare that made me feel both visible and vulnerable. I busied myself with the kettle, acutely aware of his presence in my home, of how strange this situation was. A man like him didn't end up in a neighborhood like this by accident. People like him had drivers, security, penthouses with perfect heating and no leaking roofs, but people like me didn't ask questions. People like me took each moment as it came and were grateful for the warmth of simple human kindness, even from strangers. I heard the bathroom door close and water running in the sink. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled 3 mismatched mugs from the cabinet, the only 3 I owned that weren't chipped. Why was I so nervous? I'd invited them in. It was just one night, just shelter from a storm. By morning, they'd be gone, and this would be nothing but a strange memory. The kettle whistled, and I poured the hot water over cheap tea bags, watching the water turn amber. I found an old t-shirt of mine that would be huge on Luca, and set it on the bathroom doorknob with a gentle knock. "Thank you." Marco's voice came from the other side, and I jumped, not realizing he'd been standing so close to the door. When they emerged 15 minutes later, Luca was swimming in my shirt, his small hands barely visible beneath the sleeves. His hair was towel-dried and sticking up in adorable tufts. Marco had removed his coat, revealing a black shirt that probably cost more than my monthly rent. It clung to his frame, and I quickly averted my eyes, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "Sit." I gestured to my worn couch. "The tea's ready. I'm sorry I don't have much else to offer. There's some bread and cheese if you're hungry." "We're fine," Marco said. But his hand guided Luca to the couch with a gentleness that surprised me. The child immediately curled into his father's side, still clutching the wet rabbit. I handed them the mugs, and Marco's fingers brushed mine as he took his. The contact was brief, barely a second, but I felt it like an electric shock. His hands were warm despite the rain, strong, with calluses that suggested he wasn't just some privileged businessman. "What were you doing out there?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "I mean, you don't have to answer. It's just, this isn't exactly the kind of neighborhood where people like you." I cut myself off, embarrassed. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "People like me? You know what I mean." I sat in the armchair across from them, tucking my feet under me. "Your coat probably costs more than my car." "We had car trouble," he said smoothly, the explanation rolling off his tongue too easily. "My phone died. The storm came quickly. It was a lie. I knew it instinctively, the way you know when someone's hiding something significant. But I nodded, sipping my tea, because what else could I do? I'd already let them in. I was already complicit in whatever story he wanted to tell. Luca's eyes were drooping, his small body relaxing against his father's side. Marco adjusted his position, pulling the child more securely against him, and I saw something in his expression soften. A crack in the controlled facade, a glimpse of genuine love and protection. "He's exhausted," I said softly. "You both can stay the night. I have a spare bedroom. It's small, and the bed's not great, but—" "We can't impose," Marco interrupted, but there was no real protest in his voice. "You already are," I pointed out with a small smile. "And honestly, I'd feel terrible sending you back out into that." I gestured toward the window, where the storm raged on unabated. "Please, it's just one night." His eyes held mine for a long moment, and I felt pinned by that gaze, like a butterfly under glass. He was deciding something, weighing options I couldn't begin to understand. Then he nodded. Just once. "Thank you, Emma Carter," he said. And the way he said my name, slowly, deliberately, as if committing it to memory, sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. I showed them to the spare room, apologizing for the dust and the faded quilt, for the way the floorboards creaked and the window didn't quite shut properly. Marco listened to all my nervous chatter with that same intense attention, and when I finally ran out of words, he simply said, "It's perfect." Luca was already asleep in his arms, the stuffed rabbit clutched to his chest. Marco laid him gently on the bed, pulling the quilt up to his chin with such tenderness it made my chest ache. What kind of man was this? What kind of father? "If you need anything," I started. "Emma." My name again, stopping me at the door. I turned to find him standing close, closer than I'd realized. In the dim light from the hallway, his face was all shadows and sharp angles. "Why did you help us?" The question caught me off guard. Why wouldn't I? Most people would have looked away, kept their door locked. I shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable under his scrutiny. I'm not most people, I guess, and he's just a child. No child should be out in that storm. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, perhaps, or calculation. "No," he agreed quietly. "No child should." He was standing too close. I could smell that expensive scent again, could feel the heat radiating from his body. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I didn't understand why. This was just a stranger, just a man seeking shelter. By morning, he'd be gone. "Good night, Marco," I managed, backing toward the door. "Good night, Emma." I retreated to my bedroom, closing the door and leaning against it. My hands were shaking. Why were my hands shaking? I'd done a good deed, nothing more. So why did I feel like I'd just opened a door I'd never be able to close again? I changed into my nightgown and slipped between my thin sheets, listening to the storm rage outside and the creaks of my house settling. I couldn't hear anything from the spare room. No movement, no sound, but I knew he was there, just down the hall. This stranger with the expensive coat, and the dangerous eyes and the gentle hands when he held his son. Sleep was a long time coming. When it finally did, I dreamed of shadows and secrets, of hands that held too tight, and eyes that saw too much. I woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind that peculiar stillness that always follows violence. Dawn light filtered through my threadbare curtains, painting my room in shades of gray and gold. For a moment, I lay still, convinced the previous night had been a dream. Some fever-induced fantasy brought on by exhaustion and loneliness. Then I heard it, the soft murmur of voices from my kitchen. Male voices, more than one. My heart jumped into my throat as I threw back my covers and grabbed my robe, tying it hastily as I rushed down the hallway. I stopped short at the kitchen entrance, my hand gripping the doorframe as I took in the scene before me. Marco stood at my counter, looking impossibly elegant despite wearing yesterday's clothes. But it wasn't him that made my blood run cold. It was the two other men in my kitchen. Large men, built like professional fighters, wearing dark suits and expressions of cold professionalism. One stood by my back door, arms crossed. The other was speaking quietly into a phone, his eyes constantly scanning the space. And there, sitting at my small kitchen table eating a bowl of cereal I didn't remember having, was Luca, seemingly unbothered by the presence of these intimidating strangers. Marco's head turned the instant I appeared, as if he'd sensed my presence before I'd made a sound. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I saw the truth written in his expression: acknowledgement, warning, regret. "Emma," he said calmly, as if armed men in my kitchen was perfectly normal. "I'm sorry for the intrusion. My associates arrived to collect us." Associates. The word hung in the air between us, loaded with implications I didn't want to acknowledge. "Who are you?" The question came out as a whisper. "Really?" Marco moved toward me, and both suited men tensed, their hands moving to their jackets, where guns were probably holstered. I pressed myself against the doorframe, suddenly terrified. "Don't be afraid," Marco said, his voice low and soothing, the same tone he'd used with Luca. He stopped a few feet away, maintaining distance but close enough that I could see the conflict in his dark eyes. "You're safe. You've always been safe." "That's not an answer." My voice was stronger now, anger mixing with fear. "Who are you?" Before he could respond, Luca's small voice piped up from the table. "Papa, can we bring Emma with us? I like her house." One of the suited men, the one by the door, let out a short, humorless laugh before quickly sobering under Marco's sharp glance. Marco's jaw tightened, and he looked at me with an intensity that made my knees weak. "My name is Marco Valentino," he said quietly. Each word precisely delivered, and last night, you gave shelter to the head of the Valentino family. The words didn't make sense at first. Valentino. The name tickled something in the back of my mind. News reports I'd half listened to, whispered warnings about organized crime, about the family that controlled half the city's underground operations. I couldn't finish the sentence. My mouth had gone dry. "Yes," he confirmed, his eyes never leaving mine. "And now, Emma Carter, we have a problem." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I gripped the doorframe harder, my knuckles white, trying to process what he'd just told me. Marco Valentino, the Valentino family. I'd heard the name whispered in the diner, seen it in newspapers I couldn't afford to buy but glimpsed at the convenience store. They were criminals. Dangerous. Untouchable. And I'd let one sleep in my house. "I need you to sit down," Marco said, his voice still calm, still controlled, but with an edge of concern that somehow made everything worse. "Please, Emma. Don't tell me what to do." The words came out sharper than I intended, fueled by panic and adrenaline. "You lied to me. Car trouble? Your phone died? You lied." "I didn't lie about needing shelter," he said, taking a small step closer. Both guards moved with him, synchronized, protective. The storm was real. Luca was cold and frightened. That part was true. But everything else, my voice cracked. "Who are you running from? What kind of danger did I just invite into my home?" The man by the back door, dark-haired, with a scar running through his eyebrow, spoke up in Italian. Marco responded in the same language, his tone sharp, authoritative. The guard fell silent immediately, but I caught the word problema, and my stomach twisted tighter. "Emma." Marco's attention returned to me, and I saw something in his expression I hadn't expected. Genuine remorse. "What I'm about to tell you, I need you to understand first, that you're not in danger. Not from me. Not from anyone associated with me." "That's not reassuring when you have armed men in my kitchen," I shot back, my eyes darting to Luca, who was watching us with those two old eyes, completely unfazed by the tension crackling through the room. "They're here for protection," Marco said. "Mine and Luca's. And now, unfortunately, yours." "Mine?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Why would I need protection?" Marco ran a hand through his hair, the first sign of agitation I'd seen from him. It was such a human gesture, so at odds with the dangerous criminal he was supposed to be, that it momentarily disarmed me. "Because people saw us enter your house last night," he explained. "Because in my world, nothing goes unnoticed. And because by morning, anyone who wants to hurt me will know exactly where I spent the night and with whom." The implication hit me like a physical blow. "You're saying that because I helped you, because I was stupid enough to open my door." "You weren't stupid," he interrupted, his voice hard. "You were kind. And kindness is rare enough that it shouldn't be punished. But it will be." It wasn't a question. I could see it in his eyes, in the tense postures of his guards, in the way Luca had learned to be so quiet and still, despite being only 6 years old. "Won't it?" Marco's silence was answer enough. My legs finally gave out, and I sank onto the worn couch, my head in my hands. This couldn't be happening. I was a waitress. I lived paycheck to paycheck. I was invisible, unremarkable, exactly the kind of person who should never end up tangled in the affairs of the Mafia. I felt the couch dip beside me and knew without looking that Marco had sat down. He maintained a respectful distance, but I could feel the heat of his presence, that same magnetic pull I'd felt last night. "I have 2 options to offer you," he said quietly, and I forced myself to look at him. In the morning light streaming through my windows, He was even more striking and more dangerous. The first is that you come with us. Now, I take you somewhere safe, somewhere I can guarantee your protection until this situation is resolved. Resolved how? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Until anyone who might see you as leverage against me understands that you're under my protection. That touching you would mean war. The casual way he said war sent ice through my veins. And the second option? His jaw tightened. There is no second option, Emma. Not one that keeps you alive. The bluntness of it stole my breath. You're saying I have to go with you or I'll die. I'm saying that last night, by opening your door, you became visible to people who operate in shadows. And those people don't take chances. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his voice dropping lower. I'm sorry, truly. If I'd had any other choice, I wouldn't have knocked on your door. But Luca was hypothermic, and this was the only house with lights on. And I gambled that whoever lived here would be too decent to turn away a sick child. You used your son, I breathed, the realization dawning. You used him to manipulate me. I used what I had, he admitted. No apology in his voice now. That's survival in my world. But I also saw how you looked at him, how you touched his hair and smiled even though you were clearly exhausted. You weren't performing kindness, Emma. You were being kind. There's a difference. I wanted to scream at him, to throw him and his guards out of my house, to pretend this was all some terrible nightmare. But the way Luca was watching me from the table, cereal forgotten, told me everything I needed to know about how real this was. How long? I asked finally, resignation seeping through the fear. How long would I have to stay under your protection? Days? Weeks? It depends on how quickly I can send a message that makes my position clear. What kind of message? His smile was cold, predatory, and I saw for the first time the man who'd built an empire on fear and violence. The permanent kind. I stood abruptly, needing distance from him, from the casual way he discussed murder. I paced to the window, staring out at my quiet street, at Mrs. Chen's abandoned house where all of this had started. My normal life, my boring, exhausting, paycheck-to-paycheck life, was ending. I could feel it slipping away like water through my fingers. I have work, I said, grasping at normalcy. My shift starts at 10. I need to call. You can't go to work. Marco had risen as well, and I felt him approach, felt the air charge with his presence. You can't contact anyone, not yet. I'll be fired. The words came out choked. I'll lose my job. I'll lose this house. I'll lose everything. I'll take care of it. His voice was close now, right behind me. Your job, your house, your bills, everything. Consider it payment for the kindness you showed me. I spun to face him, anger flaring hot and bright. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you except to go back to yesterday, to not answer my door, to not... But you did answer, he said softly, and suddenly he was too close, his dark eyes boring into mine with an intensity that made my heart race for entirely different reasons. You opened your door. You welcomed us in. You made Luca smile for the first time in 3 days, and now I can't... He stopped, something flickering across his face too quickly to read. I won't let anyone hurt you because of that. This isn't protection, I whispered, even as my body betrayed me by swaying slightly toward him. This is captivity, perhaps. He didn't deny it. But you'll be alive. The guard by the door cleared his throat, speaking rapid Italian again. Marco responded without breaking eye contact with me, and I felt stripped bare under that gaze, like he could see every thought, every fear, every traitorous flutter of attraction I was trying desperately to suppress. We need to leave, he said finally. Now. Pack a bag. Only essentials. And if I refuse? I knew the answer, but needed to hear him say it. Then I'll have Dante pack for you while Alessandro carries you to the car. He nodded toward the 2 guards. I'd rather you came willingly. It wasn't a choice. We both knew it. I was a mouse caught in a trap that looked like kindness, like protection, like shelter from a storm, but the trap had already closed, and the man holding the strings was watching me with an expression that mixed regret with something darker, something possessive that made my skin prickle with awareness. 10 minutes, I said, my voice hollow. Give me 10 minutes. Marco nodded, stepping back to give me space I no longer believed in. Luca, he called to his son. Go with Emma. Help her pack. The little boy scrambled down from his chair and took my hand with complete trust. And that, more than the guards, more than the implicit threats, broke something inside me. This child, innocent in all of this, had already learned to accept upheaval as normal. I led Luca to my bedroom, my hands shaking as I pulled out my battered suitcase from under the bed. What did you pack when your life was being dismantled? I grabbed clothes mechanically, jeans, t-shirts, a sweater, underwear, my toothbrush from the bathroom, the photo of my grandmother from my nightstand. You're scared, Luca observed, sitting on my bed and watching me with those disconcerting eyes. Yes, I admitted. No point in lying to a child who'd clearly seen more than he should have. Papa won't let anyone hurt you, he said with absolute certainty. He's the strongest person in the world. Is he? I zipped the suitcase, my movements jerky with suppressed emotion. He killed the man who hurt my mother. Luca said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather, so nobody hurts people Papa loves anymore. The casual mention of murder from a 6-year-old's lips made my stomach turn. What kind of world was I entering? What kind of life had this child lived? I'm sorry about your mother, I managed, kneeling before him and gently touching his dark curls. I don't remember her much, he admitted. But Papa says she was beautiful. Like you. The compliment, innocent and sweet, somehow made everything worse. I wasn't beautiful. I was ordinary, unremarkable, exactly the kind of person who should never catch the attention of a man like Marco Valentino. We returned to the living room where Marco stood by the window, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. He looked up as we entered, his eyes immediately finding mine, then dropping to the suitcase in my hand. Something in his expression softened almost imperceptibly. He ended the call and pocketed his phone. Ready? No, I answered honestly. But I don't think that matters. No, he agreed quietly. It doesn't. Dante took my suitcase, and Alessandro held the front door open. Marco placed his hand on the small of my back, a gesture both possessive and protective, guiding me outside. The touch sent electricity up my spine, and I hated myself for noticing, for feeling anything other than fear. The vehicle waiting at my curb was exactly what I should have expected. A black SUV with tinted windows, sleek and expensive, and completely out of place on my shabby street. I could see my neighbors' curtains twitching, could feel their eyes on us, and I wondered what they were thinking. What story would they tell themselves about why Emma Carter was leaving with strange men in the early morning? Marco opened the back door himself, waiting for me to climb in. Luca scrambled in first, and I followed, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Marco slid in beside me, and the door closed with a solid, final-sounding thunk. The interior smelled like leather, and that same expensive cologne I'd noticed last night. Alessandro took the driver's seat, and Dante rode shotgun, and then we were moving, pulling away from my house, from my street, from everything familiar and safe. I twisted in my seat, watching my little house disappear behind us. The peeling paint, the crooked mailbox, the garden I'd never had time to tend, all of it fading into the distance. My throat tightened with tears I refused to shed. You'll see it again, Marco said quietly beside me, and I realized he'd been watching me, not the road. I promise. Your promises don't mean much to me right now, I replied, facing forward again, trying to build walls around the emotions churning inside me. Then I'll have to earn your trust. I laughed, a broken sound. You can't earn something you stole. His hand moved and I tensed, but he only adjusted Luca's seatbelt, checking that his son was secure. The gentleness of the gesture was at odds with everything I knew about him, and I didn't know how to reconcile the loving father with the criminal who'd just kidnapped me. Where are we going? I asked after several minutes of silence. Somewhere safe. Somewhere I can control the variables. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. He shifted, and his leg pressed against mine in the confined space. I moved away, pressing myself against the door. His jaw tightened, but he didn't comment. We drove through the city, leaving my working-class neighborhood behind for areas I'd only seen in magazines. The buildings grew taller, newer, shinier. The people on the sidewalks wore designer clothes and carried expensive coffee. This was a world I'd waitressed in but never belonged to. Finally, we pulled into an underground garage beneath a gleaming high-rise. Alessandro used a keycard to access a private elevator, and we rode it in silence to the penthouse level. My ears popped from the altitude. The elevator opened directly into an apartment. No, not an apartment. A palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, sunlight streaming in to illuminate marble floors and expensive art. Everything was pristine, modern, cold, beautiful, but lifeless. "Welcome home," Marco said. And the irony in his voice suggested he knew exactly how absurd that sounded. Luca ran immediately to what was clearly his room, familiar with this place in a way that told me they lived here at least part of the time. I stood frozen in the entrance, my cheap suitcase looking even more pathetic against all this luxury. "I'll show you to your room," Marco offered, gesturing down a hallway. "You should rest. It's been a difficult morning." "Difficult," I repeated numbly, following him because what else could I do? That's one word for it. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom larger than my entire house. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in what looked like silk sheets. Another wall of windows showcased the city spreading below us like a toy model. An ensuite bathroom gleamed with marble and gold fixtures. "If you need anything, just ask," Marco said, setting my suitcase on a bench at the foot of the bed. "There are clothes in the closet already. I'll have more brought that actually fit you. How did you—" I started to ask how he'd prepared this room so quickly, then realized he hadn't. This room had been ready, waiting. "You planned this. Last night, when I let you in, you already knew you'd bring me here." His silence was confirmation. "You bastard," I breathed, the betrayal hitting fresh and sharp. "You manipulated everything. I made contingency plans," he corrected, his voice hardening. "That's what keeps people alive in my world. And those plans now include you, whether you like it or not." "I don't like it." I moved past him into the room, needing space, needing to not be so close to him. "I hate it. I hate you." "That's your prerogative." He moved to leave, then paused at the door. "But Emma, hate me all you want. Just stay alive while you do it." The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I was alone in my gilded cage, staring out at a city I no longer recognized, wondering how a single act of kindness had led me here, trapped in paradise with a devil who looked at me like I was something precious and dangerous all at once. I sank onto the edge of the obscenely comfortable bed and finally let myself cry. I must have cried myself to sleep, because I woke to darkness, disoriented and aching. For a confused moment, I thought I was home, that everything had been a nightmare. Then I saw the city lights twinkling through the massive windows, felt the silk sheets beneath my fingers, and reality crashed back with suffocating weight. My phone. I needed my phone. I scrambled off the bed, searching for my purse, my pockets, anything. Gone. Of course it was gone. Marco wouldn't risk me calling for help. Wouldn't risk me telling someone where I was. A soft knock on the door made me freeze. "Emma?" Marco's voice, muffled through the wood. "May I come in? Do I have a choice?" I called back, my voice hoarse from crying. The door opened slowly, and he entered carrying a tray. The smell of food hit me, and my stomach clenched with hunger I'd been too distraught to notice. He'd changed clothes, now wearing dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. "You slept through lunch," he said, setting the tray on the dresser. "It's nearly 8. "Where's my phone?" I demanded, ignoring the food even as my stomach growled. "Safe. You'll get it back when the time is right. When you decide I can be trusted, you mean. When I'm certain that anyone tracking your signal won't lead them here." He gestured to the tray. "Pasta and cream sauce, salad, wine. Please eat. You'll need your strength." "For what? My captivity?" I remained standing by the bed, arms crossed, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. In reality, I was acutely aware that I was alone with him, that no one knew where I was, that I was completely at his mercy. Marco studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "You're not a prisoner, Emma. You're a guest under protection. A guest who can't leave, can't call anyone, can't have her phone." I laughed bitterly. "That's called a prisoner where I come from." "Then I'm sorry you see it that way." He moved toward the windows, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city. The lights cast his profile in sharp relief. The strong nose, the hard jaw, the mouth that could probably be cruel but had been gentle when he spoke to his son. "I understand you're angry. You have every right to be, but your anger won't change the reality of your situation." "Which is what exactly?" I moved closer, drawn despite myself. "How long am I supposed to stay here? Days? Weeks? Forever?" "Until I eliminate the threat." He turned to face me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. "There are 3 men who would see you as an opportunity. 3 men who would use you to get to me. By this time tomorrow, there will be none." The casual way he discussed murder should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else. Something darker. Something that whispered he was doing this for me. Protecting me. Claiming me as his to defend. I shoved that thought away viciously. "You're going to kill 3 people because I let you sleep in my spare room?" "I'm going to kill 3 people because they would torture and murder an innocent woman to hurt me. The fact that you showed me kindness is irrelevant to them. The fact that you matter to me is all they need to know." "I don't matter to you," I protested, but my voice wavered. "You don't even know me." Marco crossed the distance between us in 3 strides, and suddenly he was close, too close, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space. "I know you work double shifts at a diner and still smile at customers who are rude to you. I know you live in a house that's falling apart, but you keep flowers on your kitchen table because beauty matters even when you're exhausted. I know you opened your door to strangers in a storm when anyone else would have called the police or looked away. How do you—" I started, then stopped. "You had someone investigate me. The moment we left your house, I had people learn everything about you." He didn't sound apologetic. "Emma Marie Carter, 26. Parents died in a car accident when you were 19, raised by your grandmother, who left you the house when she passed 2 years ago. No siblings, no close friends. You work 60-hour weeks and you're still barely making ends meet. You have $17 in your checking account and a stack of bills you can't pay." Each fact felt like a violation, like he'd stripped me bare without permission. "Stop. You deserve better than that life," he continued, his voice dropping lower, more intense. "You deserve better than working yourself to death for people who don't even see you." "And you think you're better? You think this?" I gestured at the luxurious room, at him, at everything. "Is what I deserve? To be owned by a criminal?" His hand came up, and I flinched before I could stop myself. He froze, something like pain flashing across his face. Then slowly, carefully, he reached past me to pick up the wine glass from the tray. "I don't want to own you, Emma," he said quietly, taking a sip. "I want to protect you. There's a difference. I don't see one." "Then you're not looking closely enough." He set the glass down and moved toward the door. "Eat, rest. Tomorrow will be difficult." "Why?" I called after him. "What happens tomorrow?" He paused, his hand on the doorframe, his back to me. "Tomorrow you meet the family. And tomorrow, everyone in this city learns that you're under the protection of the Valentino name. That you're—" He trailed off, seemed to wrestle with something, then finished. "That you're mine to defend." The possessiveness in that last statement sent a shiver through me that was equal parts fear and something far more dangerous. He left before I could respond, the door closing with that same soft, final sound. I stared at the food, my stomach at war with my pride. Eventually, hunger won. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, my mind racing through everything that had happened, everything he'd said. By the time I finished, a plan had begun to form, desperate and probably futile, but a plan nonetheless. I waited until midnight, then crept to my door and eased it open. The penthouse was dark and silent. I could see Alessandro sleeping in a chair by the elevator, his gun visible in a shoulder holster. Escape that way was impossible. I moved quietly down the hallway, searching for another exit, a phone, anything. I passed Luca's room. Door open, nightlight casting gentle shadows. The child was sprawled across his bed, one arm thrown over his head, the stuffed rabbit clutched in the other, so innocent, so unaware of the violence his father dealt in. Further down, I found Marco's office. The door was ajar, light spilling out. I should have turned back, should have returned to my room, but something drew me forward. I peered through the gap. Marco sat at a massive desk, paperwork spread before him, a glass of whiskey at his elbow. He'd removed his shirt, and in the lamplight, I could see his back, muscular and marked with scars that told stories of violence survived. He ran his hands through his hair in that gesture of frustration I was beginning to recognize, and I realized he looked tired. Not just physically exhausted, but weary in a way that went soul deep. "You can come in," he said without turning around. "I know you're there." I considered running, but there was no point. I pushed the door open fully and stepped inside. "How did you know?" "I always know where you are." He finally turned, and his eyes roamed over me, taking in my bare feet, my wrinkled clothes from sleeping, my hair that I knew was a mess. "Can't sleep? Can you blame me?" I moved further into the room, drawn by a curiosity I couldn't quite suppress. The walls were lined with books, real books, not for show. Art hung in spaces between, pieces that looked original and probably cost fortunes. "Nice office. Very mob boss chic." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're mocking me." "I'm terrified of you. Mocking is all I have left." I ran my fingers along the spines of his books. Classic literature, philosophy, art history. "You read." "Surprised?" He leaned back in his chair, watching me with that intensity that made me feel like I was the only thing in his world. "What did you think? That criminals don't appreciate beauty? Don't think beyond violence and money?" "I don't know what to think about you," I admitted, pulling out a worn copy of Dante's Inferno. "One minute you're threatening to kill 3 people, the next you're reading Italian poetry." "My mother's favorite," he said softly. "She used to read it to me before bed. Ironic, perhaps, considering the subject matter." "What happened to her?" I asked before I could stop myself. His expression shuddered. "She died when I was 12. Same week my father was arrested. I was raised by my uncle after that. A man who believed love was weakness and mercy was a death sentence." He took a drink of his whiskey. "He was right about one thing. In my world, showing you care about something is the fastest way to lose it. Then why tell people I matter to you?" I set the book down, moving closer to his desk. "Why not just hide me somewhere? Why put a target on my back? Because hiding you would only work temporarily. Eventually, someone would find you. But if everyone knows you're protected by me, if everyone understands that touching you means war with the Valentino family." He stood, coming around the desk. "Then you become untouchable, the safest person in this city, or the most valuable target. Not if I make the cost of that target too high." He was close now. Close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Not if I make it clear that anyone who harms you will watch everyone they love die before I kill them slowly." The violence in those words should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself frozen, caught in his orbit like a moon with no choice but to circle. "You're insane," I whispered. "Perhaps." His hand lifted, hovering near my face but not touching. "Or perhaps I'm the only sane one in a world gone mad. You showed kindness to a stranger. In my world, that's revolutionary. In any world, that should be normal. Should be. Isn't." His hand dropped. "Go to bed, Emma. Tomorrow will be challenging enough without exhaustion." I should have left. Instead, I heard myself ask, "What happened to Luca's mother?" Pain flashed across his face, raw and unguarded. "Sophia, she was soft, gentle. Too good for someone like me, but I was young and selfish and I wanted her anyway." He returned to his desk, refilling his whiskey with hands that weren't quite steady. "We married, had Luca. I thought I could keep them safe, keep them separate from the business. I was wrong. What happened? I asked again, gentler this time. A rival family took her, used her to get to me. They sent me pieces of her. His voice cracked, and he drank deeply. By the time I found where they were keeping her, she was already gone. But before she died, she'd managed to hide Luca in a closet, saved his life at the cost of her own. Horror washed through me. Marco, I killed everyone involved, he continued, his voice flat now, emotionless. Everyone who touched her. Everyone who knew where she was. Everyone who could have stopped it. 23 men dead in one night. And I'd do it again. I'd do it 1,000 times. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were haunted. So when I say I'll protect you, Emma, understand that I mean it absolutely. No one will touch you while I draw breath. No one. The conviction in his voice, the raw pain underneath, it cracked something in my chest. This wasn't just a criminal who'd kidnapped me. This was a man destroyed by loss, driven by guilt, desperate to not fail again. I'm sorry, I said softly, meaning it. I'm sorry for what happened to her, to you, to Luca. Don't be sorry for me, he said roughly. Be sorry for anyone foolish enough to threaten what's mine. There was that possessiveness again, wrapping around me like chains made of silk. I should have hated it. I should have run. Instead, I found myself asking, why me? Of all the houses on that street, why did you choose mine? His eyes locked on mine, because yours was the only one with lights on. Because I saw you through your kitchen window, washing dishes and looking so tired but so present, alive, real. And I thought... He stopped, shook his head. It doesn't matter what I thought. Tell me, I insisted, moving closer, despite every instinct screaming to maintain distance. I thought you looked like someone who still believed in kindness, despite having every reason not to. Like someone who'd survived everything life threw at you, and somehow remained soft. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Like someone worth protecting. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. Could see the pulse jumping in his throat. This was wrong. He was wrong. Criminal, dangerous, controlling. But the way he looked at me made me feel seen for the first time in years. Not invisible. Not a waitress or a struggling homeowner or a lonely woman barely surviving. Just... Emma, I should go, I managed. But my feet didn't move. You should. He agreed, but he stepped closer. This is insane. Completely. You kidnapped me. For your protection. I should hate you. You should. His hand came up, and this time, he let himself touch. Just his fingertips grazing my cheek, so gentle it made my eyes burn with unexpected tears. But do you? The truth was complicated, twisted, impossible. I was terrified of him, furious with him, trapped by him. But when I looked into those dark eyes and saw the pain, the desperate need to protect, the loneliness that mirrored my own. No, I didn't hate him. I hated that I didn't hate him. I don't know, I whispered honestly. Then let me make it simple. His thumb traced my lower lip, and my breath caught. Tomorrow, you'll stand beside me in front of my family and every important player in this city. You'll let me put my protection around you like armor, and in return I'll give you something you've never had. What? The word came out breathless. A choice. He stepped back, breaking the spell, his expression shifting to something harder, more controlled. After tomorrow, after everyone knows you're mine to protect, you can choose to stay or go. I'll set you up anywhere you want. New city, new identity, enough money to never work another double shift. Or you can stay here with Luca and me, and let me show you what it means to be treasured instead of merely surviving. That's not a real choice, I protested. If I leave, someone might still come after me. No. His voice was absolute. Once I've eliminated the immediate threats and established your protection, if you choose to leave, I'll make sure you're safe. I have resources. I can make you disappear completely, set you up with a new life. You'll be free. Then why would I stay? He smiled, sad and knowing. That's what you'll have to decide. Now go to bed, Emma. Tomorrow you become untouchable." This time, I did leave, my legs somehow carrying me back to my gilded cage of a room. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart racing, my mind spinning. He'd offered me freedom, eventually. After one more day of playing whatever role he needed me to play, it should have been an easy choice: endure tomorrow, then run and never look back. So why did the thought of leaving make my chest ache? I climbed into the silk sheets and stared at the ceiling, watching shadows shift as cars passed far below, and wondered who I'd become in less than 24 hours. The woman who'd opened her door to strangers felt like a lifetime ago. This new Emma, who felt drawn to dangerous men and didn't immediately reject possessive claims. I didn't recognize her. But maybe, I thought as sleep finally claimed me, maybe I'd been waiting to be seen all along. And maybe Marco Valentino, for all his violence and control, was the first person who'd truly looked. Morning came too quickly, announced by soft knocking and Luca's voice calling through the door. "Emma, Papa says you need to get ready." I dragged myself from sleep, disoriented by the unfamiliar luxury surrounding me. For a moment, I'd forgotten where I was, what was happening. Then it all crashed back. The storm, Marco, the impossible situation I'd been thrust into. "Coming," I called out, my voice rough. When I opened the door, Luca stood there holding a garment bag, his small face serious. "Papa had clothes brought for you. He says they'll fit better than what you packed." I took the bag, ruffling his dark curls. "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you going to stay with us?" he asked suddenly, those two old eyes searching my face. After today, the question caught me off guard. I don't know yet." "I hope you do," he said simply. "You're nice. And you don't look at Papa like you're scared, not really. Everyone else is always scared." He scampered off before I could respond, leaving me standing in the doorway holding expensive fabric and questions I couldn't answer. Inside the garment bag was a dress that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Deep emerald silk that would hug every curve, elegant, but not overtly sexual. Whoever had selected it understood that I needed to look like I belonged at Marco's side without looking like I was trying too hard. Shoes, too, black heels that were surprisingly comfortable. And underneath, delicate lingerie that made my cheeks flush. I showered in the marble bathroom, using products that smelled like vanilla and something exotic I couldn't name. The hot water should have relaxed me, but my muscles stayed tense, coiled tight with anticipation and fear. When I finally put on the dress, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. The emerald brought out the green flecks in my hazel eyes. The cut made me look sophisticated, expensive. Like someone who belonged in Marco's world. I hated how much I liked it. A knock on the door made me jump. "Emma?" Marco's voice. "May I come in?" I opened the door and watched his expression shift when he saw me. His eyes darkened, traveling from my face down my body and back up slowly, deliberately. "You look..." He seemed to struggle for words. "Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful." "It's the dress," I said, uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. "It's you." He stepped closer, and I saw he'd dressed formally too. A black suit that looked custom-made, his dark hair styled back from his face. He looked devastating, dangerous, like sin wrapped in expensive Italian wool. "Are you ready?" "No," I admitted, "but I don't think that matters." He reached out, his fingers grazing my jaw in that gentle way that contradicted everything I knew about him. "You'll be fine. Just stay close to me. Don't speak unless someone addresses you directly. And remember, you're under my protection. No one will dare touch you." "What about after?" I asked. "You said I could choose." "When?" "After I've handled the threats, after everyone understands the consequences of coming near you." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "A few days, perhaps a week. Then you'll be free to decide." The elevator ride down felt interminable. Alessandro and Dante flanked us, both armed and alert. Luca held his father's hand, quiet and well-behaved in a way that broke my heart. What kind of childhood required this level of composure from a 6-year-old? We drove through the city in the same black SUV, but this time I paid attention to our route. We were heading to the industrial district, to a warehouse that looked abandoned from the outside. But when we pulled through the gates, I saw dozens of expensive cars already parked, men in suits standing guard at every entrance. "This is where you meet with your family?" I asked, my voice tight with nerves. "This is where we handle business," Marco corrected. "Family meetings happen here. It's secure, private. No one gets in without my permission." He helped me from the car, his hand firm on the small of my back as we walked toward the main entrance. I could feel eyes on us, hear whispers rippling through the gathered men. They were all staring at me, assessing, wondering who I was, and why Marco Valentino had brought a woman to a family meeting. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something resembling a legitimate conference space. A long table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs already occupied by hard-faced men in expensive suits. They stood as Marco entered, a gesture of respect that spoke volumes about his position in this world. "Gentlemen," Marco said, his voice carrying authority that made everyone fall silent. "Thank you for coming on short notice. Please sit." He pulled out a chair at his right hand and looked at me expectantly. I sat, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. Marco took the head of the table, Luca climbing into the chair at his left. And suddenly I realized what this looked like. A family portrait. Father, son, and the woman at his side. "Some of you have heard rumors," Marco began, his tone conversational but with an edge of steel underneath. "About where I was 2 nights ago. About who gave me shelter during the storm. I'm here to confirm those rumors and make something very clear." He reached over and took my hand, his grip warm and possessive. "This is Emma Carter. She showed kindness to my son and me when we needed it most, and as of today, she is under the full protection of the Valentino family. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong will answer to me personally." Murmurs rippled around the table. An older man with silver hair and cold eyes leaned forward. "With respect, Marco, bringing an outsider into family business is my decision to make." Marco cut him off, his voice hardening. "Emma is not involved in our business. She's simply a woman who deserves protection. Are we clear, Uncle Sal?" The older man's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Clear. Good." Marco's grip on my hand tightened slightly. "Now about the other matter, the 3 men who might see Emma as leverage. Roberto, what have you learned?" A younger man across the table opened a folder. Marcos from the Russo family was spotted near Miss Carter's old neighborhood. He had 2 men with him, asking questions about her. We intercepted them before they could learn much. "Intercepted?" Marco's voice was deadly quiet. "They're being held at the safe house, awaiting your orders." Marco nodded slowly. "And the other 2? Vincent Caruso and that new player. What's his name?" "Chen," Roberto supplied. "David Chen. He's been making moves, trying to establish territory. Both he and Caruso have shown interest in your situation. Then we handle all 3 today." Marco stood, and everyone at the table tensed. "I want messages sent. Clear, unmistakable messages. Emma Carter is not to be touched. Not now. Not ever. Anyone who tries will suffer the same fate as these 3. My stomach turned as I realized what he was planning. He was going to kill 3 men today. Because of me. Because I'd opened my door. "Marco," I whispered, tugging his hand. "Please, you don't have to." He looked down at me, and his expression softened fractionally. "I do. This is the only language they understand. Trust me." "I can't," I breathed, pulling my hand free and standing. "I can't sit here while you plan to murder people because of me." The room fell silent. I could feel the disapproval radiating from every man present. I'd challenged Marco in front of his family, questioned his authority, but I couldn't help it. This was too much, too real, too violent. Marco's jaw tightened. "Dante, take Luca to the other room. Emma and I need to speak privately." Dante stood immediately, holding out his hand to Luca. The boy looked between us, worried, then took Dante's hand and left. The other men filed out as well, until only Marco and I remained in the cavernous space. "You can't do this in front of them," he said quietly, but there was anger simmering beneath the control. You can't question me in front of my family. It shows weakness. I don't care about your image, I shot back, my own anger rising to match his. You're talking about killing people. How am I supposed to just sit there and what? He moved closer, towering over me. Smile and nod? That's exactly what you're supposed to do. That's what it means to be under my protection. You stand beside me. You trust that I know what I'm doing, and you let me handle threats the way they need to be handled. By killing them? Yes. No hesitation. No remorse. Because if I don't, if I show even a moment of mercy, every enemy I have will see you as the perfect target. They'll come for you, Emma. They'll take you and hurt you and use you against me. Is that what you want? No, but... There are no buts in this world. His hands came up to frame my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. I know it's brutal. I know it's not the life you're used to. But this is reality now. Your reality, whether you like it or not. Tears burned behind my eyes. I hate this. I hate what you do. I hate that I'm the reason people are going to die. They're not dying because of you, he said firmly. They're dying because they made the choice to threaten what's mine. That's on them, not you. Is that how you justify it? I asked, my voice breaking. By making it about choices and consequences? That's how I survive it. His thumbs wiped away tears I hadn't realized were falling. Emma, I need you to understand something. I'm not a good man. I've done terrible things. I'll do more terrible things before I'm done. But I protect what's mine. Always. And right now, you're mine to protect. I'm not yours, I protested weakly. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. Something had shifted between us last night. Some invisible line had been crossed. I felt it in the way he touched me, in the way I leaned into that touch despite my better judgment. Aren't you? His voice dropped lower, more intimate. Then why are you still here? Why didn't you run last night when you had the chance? Alessandro was by the elevator. There's a service exit in the kitchen, no guard. You're smart enough to have found it. His eyes searched mine. You stayed because some part of you knows you're safer here than anywhere else. Because some part of you wants to be claimed. The words hit too close to home. You're wrong. Am I? He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. Then tell me to stop. Tell me you don't feel this thing between us. Tell me you don't wonder what it would be like to let someone else carry the weight for once. I couldn't. God help me. I couldn't say the words because they'd be lies. I was exhausted from years of carrying everything alone, and here was this dangerous, impossible man offering to shoulder my burdens, at the cost of my freedom, my morality, maybe my soul. I don't know what I feel, I whispered honestly. Everything's happening too fast. I know, his forehead touched mine. I know, Emma, but I need you to trust me today, just today. Stand beside me. Let me show my world that you're protected. And then we'll figure out the rest. And the men you're going to kill were already dead the moment they considered using you against me. He pulled back, his expression hardening into that mask of control. This is mercy, in its own way. Quick, clean, better than what would happen if I let them continue plotting. I wanted to argue more, but I could see it was futile. Marco had made his decision. Nothing I said would change it. And deep down, in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, I understood. In his world, showing weakness meant death, and I was his weakness now, whether I'd asked to be or not. Okay, I said finally, my voice small. Okay, I'll stay beside you. I'll play whatever role you need. But Marco, I caught his hand. Don't make me watch. Don't make me see what you do to them. Something flickered in his eyes. Relief, maybe, or respect. You won't. I promise. You and Luca will stay here while I handle it. It'll be over quickly. He called the others back in, and I retook my seat, my hand in his as the meeting continued. Plans were made with cold efficiency. Locations, timing, disposal. I tried not to listen, tried to focus on Luca coloring at the other end of the table, innocent and safe while his father orchestrated death. By the time the meeting ended, my head was pounding and my stomach churned with nausea. Marco noticed, his hand warm on my shoulder as he guided me to a back room with a couch and television. Rest here with Luca, he instructed. I'll be back in a few hours. Alessandro will stay with you. You're safe. Safe. The word felt hollow. He kissed Luca's forehead, then hesitated before leaning down to press his lips to my temple. A gesture so intimate, so possessive, it made my breath catch. I'll come back to you, he murmured against my skin. I promise. Then he was gone, and I was left with a 6-year-old and a guard, waiting for a man I barely knew to return from committing murder in my name. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Luca fell asleep on the couch beside me, his head in my lap. The stuffed rabbit clutched to his chest. I stroked his dark curls absently, my mind spinning through everything that had happened. Everything that was happening right now in some distant location I didn't want to imagine. 3 men were dying because of me, because I'd opened my door. Alessandro stood by the entrance, silent and alert, occasionally checking his phone. I watched him. This man who followed Marco's orders without question, and wondered what it took to live this life. To accept violence as normal, to protect and kill with equal efficiency. How long have you worked for him? I asked quietly, needing to break the oppressive silence. Alessandro's eyes flicked to me, assessing whether to answer. 10 years, he said finally. Since I was 19. Do you ever question it? What he asks you to do? A slight smile touched his weathered face. Every day. But then I remember what the alternative is. Marco took me off the streets, gave me purpose, gave me a family. Before him, I was nothing. Now I'm something. That's worth the moral complexity, even when it means killing, especially then. His expression turned serious. In this world, Miss Carter, mercy is a luxury that gets people killed. Marco understands that. He does what needs to be done to protect his own. There's honor in that, even if it's brutal. I wanted to argue, to point out that murder couldn't be honorable. But I was too tired, too wrung out from fear and confusion, and the traitorous part of me that understood what Alessandro meant. My phone buzzed. Except I didn't have my phone. Alessandro pulled out a device and answered in rapid Italian. His expression remained neutral, but I saw tension ease from his shoulders. He ended the call and looked at me. It's done, he said simply. Marco was on his way back. Relief and horror warred inside me. It was over. 3 men were dead, and Marco was safe. And I was still protected, but 3 men were dead. I must have made a sound because Alessandro stepped closer, his voice gentler than I'd heard before. They were not good men, Miss Carter. They had done terrible things long before you entered the picture. Marco simply expedited the inevitable. 20 minutes later, the door opened, and Marco entered. He looked exactly the same, suit immaculate, not a hair out of place, no blood, no signs of violence. He could have been returning from a business lunch rather than multiple executions. His eyes found mine immediately, searching my face for... What? Judgment? Fear? I didn't know what expression I wore, only that when he moved toward me, I didn't flinch away. It's done, he said quietly, kneeling beside the couch so we were eye level. Luca still slept between us, innocent to everything. No one will threaten you now. The message has been sent and received. How can you be sure? My voice came out hoarse. Because I made certain everyone understood the consequences. Word spreads quickly in our world. His hand came up, hesitating, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. You're safe now, Emma. Truly safe. At what cost? I whispered, looking down at Luca. What kind of world is this for him to grow up in? Pain flashed across Marco's face. The only world I know how to give him, but I'm trying. His voice caught. I'm trying to make it better, to build something that doesn't require quite so much blood. Is that possible? In your world? I don't know, he admitted. But having you here, seeing how you look at Luca, how you question things that everyone else accepts, it makes me want to try, makes me want to be better than what I am. The raw honesty in his voice cracked something inside me. This was the truth of Marco Valentino, a man trapped between the violence of his world and the desire to protect what little softness remained in his life, his son. And now, impossibly, me. I want to go home, I said, needing to test his promise. To see my house. To remember what normal feels like. He nodded slowly. Tomorrow. I'll take you myself. But Emma... He caught my hand. You need to understand that home isn't safe anymore. Not permanently. Too many people know where you live. Even with my protection, there are risks. Then what am I supposed to do? Live here forever? Hide in your gilded cage? Or let me buy you a new house, somewhere safe, secure, where I can guarantee your protection? He must have seen my expression because he quickly added, not as payment, not as obligation, as a gift, because you deserve stability. You deserve a home that isn't falling apart. I can't accept that, I protested. It's too much. Why? Because it comes from me? Because money earned through my business is somehow tainted? His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. Emma, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Let me use some of it to give you security. Please. The please undid me. This powerful, dangerous man was asking. Not demanding, not commanding, but genuinely asking to help me. I need time, I said finally. Time to think. Time to figure out what I want. You have it, as much as you need. He stood, carefully lifting Luca into his arms without waking him. Come, let's go home. You've had enough stress for one day. Home. He'd called his penthouse home, including me in that definition without seeming to realize it. The drive back was quiet, Luca sleeping against his father's chest, me staring out the window at the city lights. I felt disconnected from reality, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. 2 days ago, I'd been a struggling waitress. Now I was under the protection of a mafia boss who looked at me like I was something precious. Back at the penthouse, Marco carried Luca to bed while I wandered to the windows, staring out at the glittering cityscape. From this height, everything looked clean, ordered, beautiful. You couldn't see the grime, the struggle, the violence that pulsed through the streets below. He's asleep, Marco said, returning and moving to stand beside me. He asked if you'd be here in the morning. What did you tell him? That I hoped so. He turned to face me, and in the reflection of the glass, I saw how we looked together, him tall and dark and powerful. Me smaller, but somehow fitting against his side. Emma, I meant what I said. You can leave whenever you want. I'll set you up anywhere. Give you enough money to start over completely. You don't owe me anything, don't I? I turned to face him directly. You killed 3 men today because of me. I killed 3 men because they were threats. You were just the catalyst. His hand came up to cut my cheek. But I'd do it again. I'd do it 1,000 times to keep you safe. Why? The question burst out of me. Why do you care so much? You don't know me. We're strangers, are we? His dark eyes searched mine. I know you're strong enough to survive on your own, but soft enough to cry over a scared child. I know you work yourself to exhaustion, but still find energy to care for others. I know you opened your door in a storm when anyone else would have looked away. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. You don't know my favorite color or my birthday or if I like coffee or tea, I pointed out. But my voice lacked conviction. Green, he said immediately. Your eyes light up when you see anything green. November 7th. I saw the date on your license, and tea, definitely tea. You made it for us that first night, and the way you prepared it, the care you took. That's someone who loves tea. The fact that he'd noticed, that he'd paid attention to such small details, made my throat tight with emotion. You investigated me. I observed you, he corrected. There's a difference. Emma, I've spent my life reading people, learning to see beyond what they show the world. And when I look at you, I see someone who's been invisible for too long, someone who deserves to be seen. And if I choose to leave, if I take your money and disappear? Pain flickered across his face, but he didn't look away. Then I'll miss you every day for the rest of my life. But I'll let you go, because keeping you against your will would destroy the very thing I care about. Your spirit, your kindness, your choice. I studied his face, searching for deception, for manipulation. But all I saw was brutal honesty and a vulnerability that this dangerous man rarely showed anyone. I'm scared, I admitted. Scared of you. Scared of this world. Scared of what I'm feeling. What are you feeling? His voice dropped lower, more intimate. Like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, and jumping would be insane, but staying on solid ground feels like dying slowly. I laughed shakily, like maybe I've been so busy surviving that I forgot what it means to actually live. Then let me show you. He stepped closer, his hand sliding from my cheek to the back of my neck. Let me give you everything you've been denied. Not as payment, not as obligation, but because I want to. Because seeing you happy would make this violent, brutal life of mine mean something. Marco, I started to protest, but he silenced me with a kiss. It was gentle at first, questioning, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned into it, my hands fisting in his expensive shirt, and kissed him back with all the confusion and fear and desperate need that had been building since that first night. He made a sound low in his throat, his arms coming around me, pulling me flush against his body. The kiss deepened, became more demanding, and I felt myself melting into him, into the promise of protection and passion and being wanted so completely. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Stay, he whispered. Not because you're afraid to leave, not because you feel obligated, but because you want to. Because this, he gestured between us, is worth exploring. I don't know if I can live in your world, I said honestly. I don't know if I'm strong enough for the violence, the danger, the constant fear. You're stronger than you think. You've survived things that would have broken other people. And you won't be alone. His hands framed my face. I'll be here. Luca will be here. We'll figure it out together. What if I can't do it? What if I try and fail? Then we'll deal with it when it happens. But Emma... His eyes burned into mine. Don't decide based on fear. Decide based on what you want, what you really want deep down. What did I want? I'd spent so long just trying to survive that I'd forgotten to think about actually wanting anything. But standing here in Marco's arms, feeling safer than I had in years despite the violence that surrounded him, I realized something startling. I wanted this. I wanted to matter to someone. I wanted to be protected and treasured instead of invisible and struggling. I wanted Luca's smile and Marco's intensity and the possibility of something more than endless exhaustion. I want to try, I said finally, the words feeling like both surrender and victory. I want to stay, at least for now. See if this can work. Relief and triumph flashed across Marco's face. You won't regret it. I swear to you, Emma, I'll make sure you never regret choosing us. I already regret it a little, I admitted with a shaky laugh, but I'm choosing it anyway. He kissed me again, deeper this time, with a possessiveness that should have frightened me, but instead made me feel claimed in the best possible way. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with desire. Let me do this right, he said. Let me court you properly. Dates, conversations, getting to know each other beyond crisis and violence. Let me show you what it means to be loved by a Valentino. Loved? The word caught in my throat. Eventually, he said firmly. I'm not there yet, and neither are you. But Emma... His thumb traced my lower lip. I could be. Easily. You're exactly the kind of woman I could love completely. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new house. Not a mansion, not a penthouse, but a beautiful craftsman-style home in a safe neighborhood, with good schools and a garden I actually had time to tend. Marco had kept his promise, giving me stability without making me feel owned. I heard the front door open, followed by Luca's excited voice. Emma, we brought Thai food. I smiled, wiping my hands on a dish towel as they entered. Luca ran to hug me, and I swept him up, spinning him around as he giggled. Marco followed, carrying bags of takeout, his eyes warm as he watched us. How was school? I asked Luca, setting him down. Good. I got a gold star on my art project. I drew our family. He pulled out a colorful picture, stick figures of him, Marco, and me, all holding hands under a bright sun, our family. The words no longer felt strange or wrong. Somehow, impossibly, we'd become exactly that. Marco set the food on the counter and pulled me close, kissing me with the easy affection of someone who did this every day. How was your day? Good. I met with the bakery owner about that job. I'd discovered I loved baking, and a local shop wanted to hire me to create custom cakes. Normal work. Honest work. Work I chose. They offered me the position. That's wonderful. His smile was genuine, proud. Are you going to take it? I think so. It feels right. I looked around the kitchen. My kitchen, in my house, with my family. Everything feels right. Even this? Even us? His arms tightened around my waist. Especially us. I reached up to touch his face, this man who'd turned my life upside down and somehow made it better. I love you, Marco Valentino. I love you too, Emma Carter. He kissed me again, deeper this time. Thank you for taking a chance on us, for choosing this life. Thank you for giving me a choice at all. I pulled back to smile at him, and for being patient while I figured out what I wanted. I'd wait forever for you. He meant it. I could see it in his eyes, feel it in the way he held me. Luca tugged on my shirt. Can we eat now? I'm hungry. We all laughed, and I moved to set the table while Marco unpacked the food. This was my life now. Normal dinners with the man I loved, and the child who'd become mine in every way that mattered. Yes, Marco still did dangerous things. Yes, his world was violent and complicated. But he kept that separate from us, from our home, our sanctuary. And at night, after Luca was asleep and Marco held me close in our bed, he whispered promises against my skin. Promises of protection, of love, of a future where maybe, eventually, he could leave the violence behind entirely. I didn't know if that future was possible, but I was willing to wait, willing to try, willing to believe that the man who'd kidnapped me in a storm had somehow become my salvation, because sometimes I'd learned love came from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it wore expensive suits and carried dangerous secrets. Sometimes it looked like captivity, but felt like freedom. And sometimes, opening your door to a stranger in a storm was the best decision you'd ever make.